It is not a profound statement to say all art is derivative. One creative thing always inspires or influences another, so the cycle of art continues forever and ever. Hi, my name is not Gerald, it's actually Gat, or Gatsby, and I'm no stranger to this concept myself, as much of my channel has been built on me going, hey, I think this idea or character is cool, let me make a character based on that idea, with some better at being their own unique thing compared to others. And that's something that has been bothering me as of late. I will probably never make some massive project with my OCs, like a comic or whatever, but on the chance I ever did, I would like to not be a plagiarist. So in today's video, I will be taking two of my characters who I always felt were a bit too close to their inspiration and trying to make them, well, more unique. These two characters being Vulpes and Saturnus. One being one of the protagonists, and the other being the main antagonist for this story idea I have called Liminal Lost and Found. For those who don't know, I have this original story idea called Liminal Lost and Found, aka Laugh. And it's basically just the Pooh Adventures wiki, but they all got put in the back rooms, and everyone has depression. Vulpes is this petty criminal from the Middle Ages who dreams of not only becoming a famous rogue, who only has to rely on himself, but also getting revenge on those he feels have wronged him in the past. But he's never even gotten close to either of those goals on account of him being a total flop at being a criminal. Whereas Saturnus is an older version of Vulpes from an alternate timeline, who is actually pretty epic at the whole criminal thing, but ultimately fails at getting revenge in his timeline. There's this whole plot idea where Saturnus is trying to use Vulpes to go to his timeline and replace him and get another shot at revenge, leading Saturnus to go further and further into the self-destruction spiral, whereas our boy Vulpes learns to fill his life with things like friendship and developing healthy coping mechanisms. And viewer, you may be watching this and think, oh wow, that's a really cool, unique idea. I don't know why you feel the need to change some things, but you have to take an account of the source of where these two characters come from. In the early 2010s, some preteens were obsessed with Bill Cipher or Discord, but the messed up guy I obsessed over was Slagar the Cruel, a villain from the Redwall series of books by Brian Jakes, specifically showing up in some form or another in two of the books, Redwall and Matameo, but refer to sometime in later books in the series. Slagar is a strange character to say I'm completely fascinated with. I would dare say he might even be one of my favorite characters ever, but that doesn't mean I condone or defend his actions. If you have read Redwall or Matameo, you know this all too well. Spoilers for both of those books, but from murder to his main gig of kidnapping children and selling them into unpaid internships, Slagar is a terrible guy with zero redeeming factors, and frankly, if I ever got the chance, I would beat him to non-existence with a lawn chair. For some further context, without turning this video into an essay, just know that Slagar, who used to be known as Chicken Hound in his younger days, is this terrible little guy who does terrible little things, which then lead to terrible things happening to him, like murdering an old man who was trying to stop him from stealing, which then, after running away from the crime scene, he runs into a giant snake that bites him in the face, which then creates this toxic cycle of him wanting to get revenge and doing bad things to get to that point, and combined with his delusions of grandeur, all his bad actions pile on top of one another like a terrible, terrible Jenga tower that falls over. But when it falls over, he's dead. So I just think he's a wonderful example of someone causing their own demise. Sometimes it's really satisfying to see a character just double down on their bad choices and getting the repercussions of their actions. What's really funny though is that at the same time I was first obsessing over Slagar and having this huge Redwall phase, I was also having a huge My Little Pony Friendship is Magic phase. And we all know that show loves redeeming their villains, so it's no surprise that eventually the two ideas would get crossed in my mind somehow. Flashback to 12-year-old me drawing Slagar as a pony, blasting Awoken by Wooden Toaster through my iPhone earbuds, imagining him getting a redemption arc with all my Little Pony OCs as his friends. I sadly have no archive of this point in my artistic journey, as most of that art was burned sometime later, and I was too stupid to know how to upload my art online, which was probably a good thing since that was around the time it was in vogue to make fun of young artists for being quote-unquote cringe, so I guess I kind of dodged a bullet when you think about it. Anyways, I would also have other attempts throughout my teenage years to make a morally dubious fox guy character who becomes a better person. It just goes to show that some ideas can never truly leave you. Honestly, one of the reasons I made Laugh in the first place was just to have an excuse to once again visit this idea, this time leading me to create Vulpes and Saturnus. I think my issue with these two is that I was holding their main source of inspiration with too much reverence. I watched this video called Great Artist Steal by Andrew Cunningham, which had more of a focus on video game development, but I still feel like it's applicable to other forms of artistry, and it's towards the end of the video. He says something like, stealing ideas is about having the confidence that what you are pulling from, that those influences can be absorbed into your own ideas. Which, God, I really needed to hear someone say that because it's something really obvious, but also mind-blowing. I don't talk about my inner feelings a lot, but I do constantly view whatever I'm doing creatively as lesser than, my OCs being no exception. And in my mind, for the longest time, Vulpes and Saturnus were just shitty discount versions of Slagar, and that's all they could ever be viewed as, because I couldn't take myself seriously. I think it's because Redwall as a book series is something that will forever be near and dear to me, despite all the flaws it has. I thought that anything that came from its influence wouldn't compare. It's a really self-defeating mindset. Yes, Redwall and the character of Slagar are influences to me, but I'm going to try and do my own thing, darn it. And if it's bad, then at least it's me. So what are things about Chicken Hound, aka Slagar, that really stick to me? What are the influences I want to bring over to Vulpes and Saturnus? One, he is a fox guy with a mask, and I know it's very shallow, and it is, but I think foxes are really cool, and I think characters who wear a mask are also really neat. So you put that together and it's my kryptonite. Two, I really like the idea of him being a little jerkface when he was younger, and his own actions causing him repercussions down the line. In the case of Vulpes, the things he went through, I'm thinking of making them way overkill compared to the mistakes he made. A way of not only showing how cruel the world can be sometimes, but a way to add in some more morally complicated characters, which is something I always wanted out of the Redwall books. I may be skirting the line on this, but I really like the idea of Vulpes being sometime pre-1700s technology-wise. Just the idea of some guy from the 1600s having to eat a meal made of orbits and blue talkies in some abandoned food court is just too funny for me to give up on. You know, it is fall. Hopefully this video will be out sometime before Halloween. And you know what's my go-to watch every Halloween? Over the Garden Wall. And what does that show make me think of? Puritans. Also, a quick fun fact. Did you know for a time Patrick McHale, the creator of Over the Garden Wall, worked on the script for the currently in limbo Redwall movie Netflix plans to release at some point before parting ways with the project? And here's a funny coincidence again. The icon that is Tim Curry. Not only did he voice Auntie Whispers in Over the Garden Wall, but he also voiced Slagar in the second season of the Nelvana Redwall cartoon adaptation. Isn't that funny? Sorry about the ADHD tangent there. Anyways, you know what Puritans make me think of? The Salem Witch Trials. I read The Crucible in high school. I watched The Owl House. You saw me at the Witches' Sacraments. Excuse me? What were you doing at the Witches' Sacraments? And you know what else was going on at the same time in the late 1600s? That's right, the golden age of piracy. So with all those loose dots connected, let's watch the art YouTuber actually do some art. I was kinda unsure on how I was going to share all the changes I've made to these characters, and I figured the best way I could do this was just to start with the biggest changes and go from there. First and foremost, I'm changing Vulpes' name. Well, it's not his actual name. I had this idea since day one that Vulpes would be an alias, a name he came up with to try and make some cool new identity in Liminal. As time has gone on, however, the name just didn't feel right, and I was thinking more about how this whole alias thing would work in story, and it hit me that in his dimension of origin, Vulpes was constantly changing his name from town to town, each time creating a new identity to cover up his history of petty scams better. In his most recent attempt, he was going around claiming to be a pirate. He had only stolen a coat and come up with the name John when some actual pirates called him out for stealing one of their fellow pirates' coats, and him being a fake pirate, with this purposeful irony that these pirates hate John for stealing from them. You know, something like, "Arg, me matey, we may be pirates, but we don't condone stealing." The pirates would then proceed to chase John and try to punish him for disrespecting real pirates. And it's during this chase that John ends up slipping into the Liminal. And then he meets other characters in the Liminal. He lies about having amnesia as a easy cover-up for his misdeeds. Because, you know, in a survival situation, you're less likely to gain allies if they know you have a history of being a thief. He once again decides to use the name John, and another character makes a joke like, "Oh, that's funny, you don't know who you are and your name is John. So it's like John Doe, except you're a fox, so you're John Fox." And from then on, a good portion of characters and Laugh refer to him as John Fox, or just John. Yes, it is stupid, but it was stupid in a funny way, and that often determines my decision making. As for his design, it's really simple. I kept things from his previous revisions, like his mask. The only major change was his outfit. I had this plot point in my head for a while that once in the liminal, John would get a change of clothes to kind of symbolize him moving forward as a person. I think this would still happen, it just makes more sense narratively for it to happen later. I even went and drew him in various outfits exploring what fashion he would wear given more options, especially with the idea of John being a closeted gay man who learns to express himself more openly within the story of Laugh. The outfit he is currently wearing is loosely based on what images I could find of lower class and pirate attire from the 1600s. I even made his jacket a purplish blue-gray color as a way to not only contrast with his orange fur, but also as a reference to a previous design of his where he had a purple jacket. So here we have an updated John Fox. So far, this is my favorite interpretation of the character. I hope he comes across as a smug failure with an air of mystery about him, because that's what he is to me. Of course, now the question is, who was he before John? And how could his past potentially lead to someone as vile as Saturnus? Once there was a small village, and on the outskirts of this village lived an old fox. Her husband was long dead, with many of her children either joining him in the grave or far away living lives of their own, all except for one, her youngest, a lad by the name of Joy and Sorrow. Named so because when he was born, he was just that, a joy in his mother's sorrow. Now, the old fox had a job passed from parent to child throughout the many generations of her family. They were healers. With their knowledge of plants, they could fix anything from a toothache to a broken leg. Of course, Joy and Sorrow was a part of this very same tradition, and he had quite the knack for it too. But the lad was not without faults. He was a liar and a braggart, constantly boasting about all the miracles he and his mother could supposedly perform, lying about the cost of getting healed, raising the prices much higher than they needed to be. Joy and Sorrow claimed he meant no harm in this. All he wanted was to get a better life for him and his mother. But his mother would always tell him that they already had enough because they had each other, and Joy and Sorrow would roll his eyes at this. And it seemed this would go on for a while, until one year, a terrible blight would destroy most of the crops in the village, and many villagers would grow sick as well. When faced with a sudden problem that is from an unknown origin, many would rather pin the blame on someone who they deem an outsider, rather than offer real solutions. And that is what happened to the old fox and her son. They were pinned as witches who had cursed the town. No one ever came to the two's defense, not even some of the youth who Joy and Sorrow had once considered his friends. The old fox died in a cold jail cell after weeks of interrogations, her body broken from all the ways the villagers tried to get their truth out of her. Joy and Sorrow ran off into the woods after escaping a botched attempt to burn him at the stake. They never found his body, and it was assumed he perished to the elements. So yeah, that's my idea for the shared early backstory of John and Saturnus. How they would diverge from each other is that I like to think there was a point in time in his youth, shortly after running away from his old village, where Joy and Sorrow has to make the decision of whether the suffering he endured justifies stepping down on other people. In my head, it plays out on a night where Joy and Sorrow, he's still in hiding and he's really hungry, and things happen to where he has to make the choice to steal from a poor family or not. In the John timeline, he talks himself out of it. But as he's leaving, he gets spotted by a member of this poor family who think that he's trying to steal their food, and an old-timey musket is shot at him, causing him to lose a chunk of his right ear. But in the Saturnus timeline, he chooses to steal from this family, and one or maybe multiple members of this poor family end up dying of starvation. And from then on, Saturnus is able to validate his toxic beliefs with the idea that he's been through the ultimate pain, he's had it the worst of the worst, and therefore he gets to make others feel bad. And how does he end up doing that? By becoming a fake witch hunter, basically doing to others what had been done to him. It's at this time I'd like to mention that he also got a name change as well, and from now on, this older, evil, alternate timeline John goes by the name of Kilsin Hopkins. Through the many years he has been alive, he was able to sneak his way into being seen as a reputable source for witch hunting. No one ever connecting the dots between him and his past identity of joy and sorrow. Kilsin's MO is basically go into a village or small town, claim that there are witches afoot, and watch the chaos unfurl as he stages various scenarios that make the townsfolk turn on each other, reaping all the benefits of being in a leadership position, and when everything calms down, he declares the town is witch-free and moves on to the next target, with his ultimate goal of destroying his once hometown. Those plans ultimately fell through, and when he was caught in the act, he too would eventually end up in the liminal. As you can tell by this character lore I have shared, I did give Kilsin the look of a stereotypical Puritan, often associated with the witch trials. Dark near blacks with a bright red underneath his cape to signify a dangerous fellow. His mask, although very similar to John's, is different, mainly in how the eye area works. On John's mask, it's a basic stylization choice based on other masked characters like Robin or Spider-Man. But in the case of Kilsin, I specifically was taking inspiration from the glass eye coverings found on Plague Doctor masks. You can even see in an older revision of his design, he was just straight up wearing a Plague Doctor's mask. I also like to think that because there's a lot of weird, wacky shenanigans going on in the liminal, he can no longer use his authority as like a witch hunter to manipulate people, so figuring out the other ways he uses people is really fascinating, how he's able to pick apart people's insecurities and use it against them, or use it to get him ahead. It's a lot of, writing potential in that I would think would make an interesting villain. It was after drawing this new design for Kilsin that I drew some art of like a hypothetical confrontation between the two foxes. And I had the song Confrontation from the Jekyll and Hyde
musical
on repeat while I was drawing this. This video has been a journey, a nerve-wracking one at that. There was one point when I was making the first draft of this script that I got hit with such a strong wave of imposter syndrome, I had a mental breakdown, which was frankly embarrassing, but hey, when is art 100% stress-free? I hope you got some entertainment from this. I don't think this video counts as a guide on how to make your own characters or anything, but maybe it inspired you to be creative in some way or another. If you happen to enjoy this video or any of my other content, please consider supporting the channel. Likes, comments, you can even subscribe if you want to. Regardless of what you do, I will forever be thankful you even chose to watch this video in the first place. So, Who do you think is more likely to make a cameo in Undertale 2? John or Kilson? Put your votes in the comments down below. Till next time, stay safe and be kind to one another. This is Gatsby from Gatskin, signing out.